Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Islam Study Circle. We'll start off our session with a Quranic verse which is being displayed before you. This verse is from Surah Hadith, and to be precise, this is verse 25th of this surah, the 25th verse of this surah, and the words are وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. And with these messengers we sent down our book, which is the judge between a right and the wrong, so that through it people are able to adhere to justice regarding what is the truth. This verse and some of the other verses which have been revealed in the same sequence refers to the purpose of divine books, that why did the Almighty reveal books with messengers of God, and what exactly is the objective of these books. So as you can see, the verse says that the objective is لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ, so that people are able to adhere to what the truth is, what justice is regarding right and wrong. So there are a number of debates, there are so many things that mankind gets entangled into as a result of philosophical thinking, I would say, as a result of a lot of sequences and a lot of connections that are the result of intermingling of various cultures, and at the same time there are questions which do arise because of the fact that, of course, being thinking people, thinking individuals, mankind has been subject to a lot of discussion vis-a-vis in areas that have come up because of a lot of scientific development, a lot of technological development. So in all these areas, the Quran says that wherever the verdict is required regarding right and wrong in matters of religion, Quran is going to guide them. So remember, before even the Quran was revealed, we have been told in the Quran that the guidance that we already possess as human beings is what is called innate guidance, and that is the guidance that we have regarding our conscience, for example, what right and wrong are as far as morality is concerned. But then this guidance, which is complementing our innate guidance, which is called divine guidance, which is called revealed guidance, is something which is a step ahead. It starts where the innate guidance ends. So there are so many philosophies, there are so many points of views regarding so many things that have come into question, they have come into play, and they have also generated a lot of debate. So the Quran has given this verdict that wherever there is a debate in matters of religion, you will find that the Quran is the final verdict. So, I mean, we can look at so many things that have happened over centuries, but just look at for example, the philosophy of Wahdatul Wujud, which is oneness of being, also referred to by Ibn al-Arabi, the famous philosopher, Spanish philosopher. And I mean, this is not just his invention or his theory. It has existed since time immemorial, and the Almighty has actually given his verdict in this book and said that this universe has not descended or is not in any way a manifestation of God as is generally understood by the proponents of Wahdatul Wujud, and has unequivocally said that the universe is a creation. It is not something that has come into being as a result of God manifesting himself into this universe. And this question actually arose because the Quran says that the universe was created out of Adam, which is nothingness. So of course, things like nothingness, they don't make sense to human beings, that how can something be created out of nothing? So this was the basic question that was confronted, or which the philosophers of Tasawwuf or mysticism were confronted with, and to make sense of it, they said that this nothingness is actually a symbolic expression of the fact that it was God himself who manifested in the form of this universe. So the Quran gave its verdict and said that this is a parallel philosophy, this is something which cannot be adhered to, because basically it is a creation of the Almighty. How he was able to create out of nothingness, of course, he's God and God can do so. So instead of rationalizing how something can be created out of nothing, we have to accept this as a miracle of God himself. Similarly, I mean, we have this age-old debate, and discussion with the people of the book, especially our Christian friends who say that Jesus is the Son of God. So again, the Almighty has given His verdict in the Quran. The Quran has said that as far as Jesus is concerned, he is a messenger of God, like so many of the messengers of God. He is not the Son of God, He is not a deity. And the Quran has severely criticized Trinity, and then also said that obviously this is what we call deviant monotheism. So the Quran, although has not accepted Trinity or the way Christians explain monotheism, but nevertheless the Quran regards the Christians to be monotheists because they claim to be monotheists. So the manifesto of the Quran is that anyone who calls himself to be a monotheist, we are no one to reject that. In a similar way, I can go on. There are so many other philosophies in which the Quran is given a verdict. Look at our political system, for example. What exactly should we follow when we are organized in the form of a country? Should it be a monarchy? Should it be a democracy? Should it be a theocracy? Or should it be a secular state, as has been proposed by many individuals? Again, there are a number of opinions. And here again, the Quran has given its verdict that in this matter, if you ask religion, the model which has been proposed is by what the Quran calls shura, and this is just a different name of what we call democracy. Most elements of democracy are found in this, and therefore it has emphatically said that the system of government of a state must be based on the consultation of the masses. Rulers have to be elected, they cannot be selected, they cannot be nominated, and they cannot be confined to any religious circles, as is the case with theocracy, as is the case with monarchy, but they have to be representatives of people. So if you just start going through the Quran, it has given its verdict on so many issues in which mankind was not able or is not able to reach the ultimate verdict or the ultimate will of God, as you can see in various issues. Similarly, take up the issue of punishments, take up the issue of worship rituals. If I take up a little history of worship rituals, we'll find that there are so many extremes which have come into existence because of the fact that at times when you leave the extent of worship to be chosen by individuals themselves, and some of them will end up forsaking this world and constantly worshipping the Almighty in various forms. Others will totally forsake it and say that, well, it's sufficient if we just remember Him, for example, in our own mind. So again, we find so many extremes. Again, God has given His verdict in this matter and shown that how worship must be, has to be calculated, has to be disciplined, although it's not directly covered in the Quran, but of course the Quran guides us towards what exactly our worship practices should be. So we can go on, and we'll see how exactly the Quran has been a very ultimate authority, and not just the Quran. So in their own times, the Injil or the Gospel, and of course in its own times, the Torah or the Pentateuch as we know it, it also in its original wording, that as long as it was present, it had the same status. And this actually has been conferred by the Almighty Himself, and the technical name for this is Furqan. So Furqan actually means something which distinguishes between the right and wrong, truth and falsehood. So this is the objective of divine books, and we are lucky that we have these divine books amongst us, although the Bible, we can say the Torah and the Injil, we do have them in the form of translations. We don't have them in the original form, but in the form of the Quran, we have guidance from God in its original words, and we can have recourse to the Quran to find out a particular answer to any religious debate that might be going on. And this is a huge favor to mankind, because you see, if you look at history, you'll find that there have been wars that have been fought, there have been anarchy, pestilence, so many things going forth in life and in various periods of time, that there has been lack of peace because of these issues. So it's God who has given us this final guidance, and of course it is now up to us to seek this guidance, to find out this guidance from the Quran, and then to follow and implement it. The next is our hadith that we are going to study, a hadith from the Prophet. This is reported by Abu Huraira and has been recorded by Imam Muslim in his Al-Jami As-Sahih. The words are: An Abi Hurairah an Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam qala yasturu abdun abadan fi dunya la yasturu abadan fi dunya illa satarahu Allahu yawm al-qiyamah. So Abu Huraira radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu reported that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, on the day of judgment, God will conceal the faults of that person who conceals the faults of others in this world. Again, it's a beautiful guidance which is given to us by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So it's not always the right thing to expose someone's sins, someone's faults, and it's always better to hide them. And the purpose, of course, being that people who are learning, people who are trying to move ahead in life, they do make mistakes. And if you can cover up for their mistakes, especially if they deserve being covered up, then this is something that the Almighty has highly recommended, and the Prophet has given us these glad tidings that if we hide the sins of people, then God will hide our sins on the day of judgment. Obviously, this is also to be understood in a particular background. Wrongdoings and sins which become a nuisance for the society, or which are in any way painful and harmful for the society, they of course are not they are not referred to here. These sins that are referred to here are ones in which personally a person might be struggling, might be trying to even mend his or her ways and trying to improve upon his own or her own conduct, but it takes a lot of time and effort. So especially people who are trying to be good but they still falter, this is a very, very healthy advice that instead of exposing people, you give them the chance, because once they get exposed, it will become very difficult for them, because people don't change opinions very easily. So a very beautiful advice which our Prophet has given. In fact, at another occasion, he has also said that once a very chaste person was guilty of adultery, or guilty of fornication, in fact, and people, people according to the methodology that has been given, reported this offense, and the Prophet actually said that, well, it would have been better if you have hidden it, because if a chaste woman, if a modest person, if someone who is absolutely bashful and would not like to continue with these practices, if something one-off happened, then it's not good to expose the doing of such a person. It is much better to hide it, because that person is not going to do it again. It's just like a blemish in which that person faltered, and it's like a one-off thing. So in a case as sensitive as adultery or fornication, the Prophet is reported to have said this, and this narrative has been reported in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, that law satartahu, that had you covered the sin of this person, it would have been better. But now that you have exposed it and brought it to the notice of the court of law, then we have no option but to deal with the person according to the Islamic Penal Code if the crime is proven. So nonetheless, what we have to understand here is that blemishes and faults are those that all of us have, and especially those blemishes and faults in which we are doing something out of ignorance, something out of forgetfulness, something that can be forgiven. So, as I said, this particular narrative actually refers to such instances, people who become audacious on their crimes, people who are sadly, they become habitual in their crimes, people who become a nuisance for the society. We, of course, are not talking about such individuals in this narrative. And now we come to the third segment of our study circle, and we are now going to read a couple of verses from the 7th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, and it says, "And why do you take note of the grain of dust in your brother's eye, but take no note of the bit of wood which is in your eye? Or how will you say to your brother, 'Let me take out the grain of dust from your eye,' when you yourself have a bit of wood in your eye? You false one! First take out the bit of wood from your eye, then you will see clearly to take out the grain of dust from your brother's eye." So again, a very, very sound piece of advice, this time from Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him. And again, this is something of a very, very important nature, a very significant nature, and that it relates to what we have often discussed in our sessions here, and that is that it is best to improve yourself through self-accountability. Instead of trying to reform other people, you must reform yourselves first. And at times, the harm that we have or the bad habit that we have is much graver than what we are trying to reform in other people, as has been the case here, that we are trying to reform, take out a small dust or a speck of dust from the eyes of some person, whereas we have a whole piece of wood in our own eyes, referring to the fact that the ills and the evils that we might be having in our own selves might be much more than the ones which we are trying to reform other people about them. So it is this self-accountability, this notion of self-accountability, and of course something in which we have to work on. And instead of just claiming to be individuals who are righteous, claiming towards righteousness and to righteousness, the Almighty says that you have to practice what you preach. If you think that righteousness is something that people have to adopt, then it has to start with your own self. And we are the subject of our own human conscience. So remember, instead of thinking what other people are doing or not doing, or where they are falling short, because on most occasions we will not be held accountable for what other people are doing, but we will certainly be held accountable for what we are doing. So the Almighty wants us, His prophets want us to concentrate on our own selves. And when we concentrate on our own selves, we'll be pleasantly surprised that maybe as a father, as a mother, as a brother, as a sister, as a daughter, we are falling way short of our responsibilities. And on the other hand, we have a lot to advise and suggest to other people. So all this advice and all this suggestion should be towards our own selves. If we have to analyze, if we are behaving in our various roles that the Almighty has created us, we might be working in a firm, we might be working in an organization in which we would have employees who are answerable to us. So as a person who is responsible for many employees, are we up to the mark? Similarly, if we are a part of an organization, are we serving that organization in the most honest way or not? As I said, we have our blood relations, which are the most important. And it is here that often we fall short, often we make mistakes, often we are guilty of blemishes. So prophets of God, they always ask us to first refine ourselves in this particular matter, and ask ourselves that as brothers and fathers and sisters and daughters and mothers and fathers, we should be always analyzing ourselves, always looking at our own faults. And there's no better a time to do so than before going to bed each night. So casting an eye on the events of the whole day and then seeing where we fell short, where we made mistakes, is the thing that we must do every day. And remember, this is like cleansing ourselves, and this cleansing is not something that's going to stop. It must continue as long as we are breathing. This cleansing is much like cleansing our own homes from dust and from dirt. So what do? We vacuum our houses. And do we vacuum our houses and then stop vacuuming them, thinking that, well, we have done so, it's enough? No, because the dust and dirt, it keeps on coming. So in a similar way, the blemishes that we as human beings, they're going to keep coming, because we are human, and as human beings we are bound to falter, we are bound to make mistakes. So just as we don't stop from cleaning our houses once or twice, we continue that forever. In a similar way, this self-accountability, this self-correction has to be something that must continue all the time. At all nights before going to bed, just a couple of minutes of review of our daily life that we had spent that day, how we spent that day, and then trying to make amends the next day. And even if we are not able to do so, we must still hold ourselves accountable, because you see, we as individuals, if we keep on undertaking a certain task, it might take some time, but that time, or the optimum time, is going to pass, and then maybe inshallah we are able to overcome ourselves. But we must not get frustrated, because bad habits, they don't go easily, they always take time. So we must always keep on continuing the process of reformation, the process of self-accountability, and never get frustrated. That old proverb of try and try again is the best that we must do in this case, that we must never give up. We must refuse to lose. We must rise after every fall, and we must rise with some new enthusiasm, with new vibrance, that this time we are not going to falter. And inshallah, if we keep doing that, there is bound to come a day in which we would be we would begin to follow, or we would begin to conquer some of the bad things that we were not able to do so. So, as you can see, it's beautifully explained once again in this in these sentences, that you have to look or take note of the wood in your eye instead of noticing the dust in your brother's eye. And just see the comparison of wood and dust. Of course, dust is a speck, it looks like a small particle, and wood is a whole chunk, it's a whole piece. So it's like saying the big things that you have, the big evils that you have in your own selves are worthy of note, and not that small speck of dust which is found in your brother or sister. Now we come to the fourth and last segment before we move on to the Q&A session. So this is a discussion, a moderated discussion, and the topic today is how can we become humble. So remember, this is a session in which all of us are, we suggest that all of you participate, and you are able to give suggestions. That humility is something which is the beginning of acknowledging the Almighty and also realizing who we are. So as humble human beings, we must lead our life. But then there are things which take the better of us and get the better of us, and we are overcome at times with false pride, with arrogance. So the opposite of humility is arrogance. So in order to remain humble all our lives, let us share our experiences and suggestions. So it's over to you, Mariam.
Thank you. Dr. Sab, I think the best way that we can be humble is to realize that all creatures, all humans in particular, have been made by the same God, the God that we believe in. Even a Hindu or a non-Muslim or a person living in the jungles of Africa or a poor person living in our neighborhood, if we just realize that that person and me, myself, have been created by the same God, I think that would lead us to be more humble and respect the other person in a way that one would, consider him to be an equal. That, to me, is the best way to become humble in this world, and that is how I see it.
So your suggestion is that if we realize that we have been made by same being, God Almighty, we are like brothers and sisters, because He could not have created, being a single creator, someone more superior to others as far as human beings are concerned, because we are born from a single parent and we have been created by one God. So all of us as human beings are equal, and if that is something that we realize, then humility will automatically set in our own nature, because we would not then make ourselves or think ourselves to be superior to others, and we will always remain humble. Yes, thank you for this suggestion. That's a good one.
That's right. I say that why? Because once I was at a shop, and there was a ostensibly Hindu-looking child who came to beg from a woman who was also a purchaser at the shop. And she asked the shopkeeper for some change, and he said he didn't have change. And then I'm surprised. He was a pious person looking like a pious Muslim with a beard and a cap on his head. And he told that woman, "Chode chode isko, ye to Hindu hai." I suddenly butted and I asked him, I said, "Yaar, Hindu, aap believe karte hain, ye Hindu hai na? Aap kya believe karte? What do you believe? That who has created him? Bhagwan has created him." He looked at me and I asked him, I said, "Tell me, why do you say this? That he is a Hindu, so we don't consider him to be a human being, or we consider somebody else has created him?" That gave me the realization that the first thing that we must do is to realize that we are all creations of the same creator, the Almighty Creator who has created all of us.
Right. That's a very nice suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Noshad. Shabana Ansari, please unmute your mic and you can share your opinion regarding this.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
मेरे ख्याल में एक तो सलाम को रिवाज देना, मतलब सलाम में पहल करना, जिस जगह पर भी जाएं, जहां पर भी जाएं, तो इससे ह्यूमनिटी का इजहार होता है। ज़ाहिर है कि वो दिल में भी होती है, तब इंसान के अंदर से निकल सकती है, वरना इतना आसान नहीं होता कि हर जगह जाके पहल करे सलाम में। एक ये
Right.
चीज, और दूसरे अल्लाह ताला की शुक्रगुजारी हर हाल में, हर चीज पे, हर कामयाबी पे, जो जो कुछ हमारे पास होता है या जो जिसको हम समझ रहे होते हैं कि ये हमारी जहन का कमाल है सब कुछ, या हमारी मेहनत का, या हमारी किसी भी चीज का, तो उसके पीछे खुदा और उसकी इतनी सारी चीजें इन्वॉल्व होती हैं कि वो हम मतलब उसको समझ नहीं सकते, और हम उसको खुदा को नहीं देख रहे होते। तो उसकी शुक्रगुजारी, और शुक्रगुजारी के साथ उस शुक्रगुजारी में लोगों को शरीक करना, तो ये हमें, मेरा ख्याल है कि हम्बल बनाने वाली चीज है, कि एक इंसानों के आगे
Correct.
आजी, और अल्लाह ताला के आजी आजी के उसका शुक्रगुजार होना, और उन चीजों
Correct.
में अपने दूसरे लोगों को शरीक करना, मेरा ये।
Yes, this is a very nice suggestion that you have given, especially when you meet people. Of course, what happens is that you expect the other person to initiate the greeting, and that should not happen. And this especially happens when you are meeting someone who is lesser in age than you, your juniors, your children maybe. So when you walk into some room or area in which there are younger people present, you would expect them to initiate greetings or salutations. So we should not wait. In fact, we should take the lead. And if there are a couple of people present, then not only initiate salutations, we should also stick out our hands so that we can shake hands with them, and don't wait for them that they initiate salutations and greetings. So I think this is one very good suggestion, and this other one is also equally good, that you have to be grateful to the Almighty for what you have, and this is a consequence of your own humility, that you acknowledge the Almighty. And I think if you add one more thing, that acknowledging one's mistake also keeps us humble, and it always keeps our eyes and ears focused on the fact that we are no saints. We are no, yes, we try to be good people, but then there are times that we falter. We end up creating a mess. So if we keep an eye on our blemishes, on our mistakes, and also be generous in acknowledging our mistakes, this also keeps us humble, because we know that humility entails acceptance of mistakes, and humility entails that we accept the fact that we can be wrong as well.
खास तौर पे अपने से छोटों से सॉरी करना, ये और भी मुश्किल काम होता है।
Correct. So yes, apologizing to people who are younger to you, this takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of strength and character. And if you are able to do that, then of course it shows that how you are humble. And I think one thing that we can also add is that acknowledging mistakes is the consequence of being a seeker of the truth, because you see, you would like what the truth is. And at this instance, the truth was that I made a mistake and I must confess to my mistake. This is what the truth is. So it's like expressing the truth and acknowledging the truth as well.
Right. And so there is something that I would like to discuss. I was watching this. It was a funny video earlier, but it had a message in it. It was like that sometimes, and I could actually relate, because I've seen people do that. So I think part of being humble is also like not trying to indirectly taunt people, or try to indirectly make them feel that they're less than us, because so there was this person who actually came into someone's house, and she said that, oh, I had to walk like across the street because your house is like in the street that is very
crowded.
It's very crowded, or it doesn't have enough space for my big car to come inside, to come in the street. So they were like actually trying to complain, and it was funny, but it was actually true, because I have seen people do that, and it's very it's not something that makes the other person feel good at all.
Right,
So.
absolutely. Also, Aruba, we need to also guard against false humility. You see, to be humble is one thing, but to be falsely humble is something that we have to be very, very careful about, because this takes subtle forms. And one of the forms is that when someone praises you, you outright negate your own self. You say, no, it was not me. And if someone says, well, you topped in the exam, you did a lot of hard work, and you say, no, it was not me. I mean, you cannot say this, because of course it was you who worked hard. So I think when someone is praising you, the best thing is that you acknowledge, in a very humble way, that thank you for your praise, but I tried my best, and I thank God for what I that I was able to accomplish such and such things. So false humility also must not be expressed, because that is a form of arrogance. If you go deep down and analyze that, false humility is something that is making you, your purpose is to express humility, but in fact, deep down, you want other people to think of you as a much superior person. So these are very subtle things, and these are very, things that we need to guard against as well.
Or sometimes expect other people to do something for us in exchange for what we do for them, what we did for
Yes.
them, or actually,
Yeah.
or at least even like mention it to them, oh, we did this for you, and you didn't.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. So it's like, you don't do a favor to someone to make that person pay back to you. Yes, that would be something that would naturally happen, but you don't do this to make that person do so. So, and you have to do, without thinking of what the other person is going to do. And also, I think we can add to this that in order to become a person who's unassuming, who's down to earth, who's humble, we must always take guard or stand guard against things that might lead to status symbols, like and also arrogance. For example, wearing certain things, or even using certain gadgets, or things which become actually status symbols. So status symbols are, it could be some brands that you are using, unless of course the intention of using a very high brand is that they are more durable, they can last long, because at times you use good brands for this as well. But if your use of brands is that you can brag before people, then that also must be guarded against. Similarly, when we talk, at times we mention our connections, that, well, I know such and such a person who is a high level person or highly placed in the society. So the purpose is that you actually, it's not that you are, it's not, no one asked you who are you connected to, but at times you bring this up in your conversation. Similarly, if you are traveling for various vacations or to various places, similarly, going to expensive restaurants and things, one thing is to have a chit chat, and another thing is to bring these topics just to impose yourselves and make other people realize how high you can go. So that also is something that we should stand guard against.
You mentioned restaurants. It is a very, very common practice nowadays on social media that people go to different restaurants and they post pictures on social media, Snapchat, Instagram, just to show that, okay, they went to this place. And I'm not saying that everybody posted just to like show
Right.
off.
Yeah.
Maybe they just want the pictures to be on
Yeah.
there, because Instagram is a
Yeah.
digital.
Also, you see, if you confine them to your own family, or maybe people who know you, so they will know that you're not bragging or showing off. And another thing is that intention also counts a lot. So at times it's just more fun activity in which you are trying to share your blessings, and also letting other people know where you've been. So that's just information sharing and fun sharing. But then it should not be in order to make other people realize that what you're doing. Another thing which I now remember, has just suddenly come to my mind, is one of the Prophet's very strong advice is, he said that, well, if you are throwing a banquet and you're not inviting your poor relatives, because when they come, people might make fun of you and say, well, okay, you also have such relatives, then, he's used very harsh words. So I think it is also here that we need to understand that, we have to deal equally with all people, give them equal respect, even if they are not well off, and especially if they are related to us, they have blood relations. We simply cannot do without them, or ignore them, or not invite them. Again, this is a form of arrogance. This is something which is against humility. So I think if you are watching the Olympics these days, you'll find so many examples of humility being shown by players of various games and sports that have been played. And in particular, there are examples of beautiful sportsmanship in which people who might have been winning, and they gave up their winning position because of a certain situation that had arisen. And I think that you might be remembering a very famous sprint or a race that was taking place between I think he was a Nigerian, probably he was winning, but he had lost his way. He was not particularly sure if the last round was there or not, and someone who was following up behind him realized that he was making that mistake. So instead of crossing him and winning the race as a result, he actually pushed him and said that you are confused at the moment, you are right near the finishing line. He pushed him and he was responsible of making that person stand first. Otherwise, he could have won the race. I think such examples of sportsmanship in which you think that, you always acknowledge that a person who deserves something should be the first recipient. And that's also, I think, a beautiful act of humility.
Indeed, it is a very beautiful act because in Olympics, everyone just wants to win the medal. So, Naushad, do you want to say something?
No, not anything in particular, but I guess I remember the incident of Sabah you're referring to, and the man coming second, probably a Canadian, he pushed him over the finish line. Thank you very much. Nothing to add.
Right. So I think one thing that we have to also understand is, I read somewhere, as a very famous scholar once said, that you have to accept that you can come second also in life. You strive for the best position in life, for example, your profession, your sports, anything that you enter into. We all want to become top individuals. But if it doesn't happen, then to learn to accept whatever is destined for you. When I say destined for you, it means that you have tried your best, you did whatever could have been done, but still you could not win the ultimate spot. So now you are prepared to be number 2 or number 3, and you are happily prepared to do that. That also is a sign of humility, because now you accept God's decision. So it's like acceptance is something which makes you a satisfied individual. It makes you realize that life is not always about attaining the top spot. It is always about attaining or receiving what you actually deserve or what you're worthy of.
Dr. Muhammad Asif, please unmute your mic and share your opinion.
My question is simply as regards to the office environment, where you have your subordinate colleagues, and no doubt one should be humble in terms of your interaction with your subordinates and other your colleagues. And at time, I have observed that you are very humble and you are lenient and you are very accommodative to your subordinates. And this is what I get in return is often, that is in terms of undiscipline, and your leniency often leads to their,
Right.
I do not get what I expect from them. I think you can understand.
Yes.
And how to, in that circumstances, that I don't want at all to be harsh to my subordinates. I want to be lenient. I want to be accommodative. What I get in return, sometimes it forces me to reconsider.
Right.
So
Yes.
What should be?
I think yes, this is something that we
situation.
Yes. So this is something that many of us do face, that if you become friendly and humble and lenient and accommodating, then the other person does not understand your lenience and he takes advantage of this. So I think the best way, if you're especially working in an office as the boss or maybe the CEO, and you have people who are answerable to you. So if there is this system of reward and punishment. Punishment, I of course speaking in terms of penalty. For example, you set a target for your employees that you have to finish this work in 2 hours or 1 day or whatever the stipulated amount, and if you do so, you'll be rewarded such and such bonuses, and if you don't do so, then there will be a penalty. So I think independent of your relations should be always cordial, always friendly, always humble in your own approach, but have a system in place which is a professional system in which you can reward and penalize people for their performance. So if you have a performance-oriented system in place in your organization, your personal interaction with your employees is not going to affect them, because if they don't meet their targets, they'll be penalized. If they meet their targets, they will be rewarded. So and look at how God has, God is no different. He has given us so many incentives in life. and in afterlife. And that is what makes us do a lot of things that we should not be doing and not do certain things that we should be doing. So this incentive oriented program which the Almighty has actually started off is something that we can copy as well in our organizations, and not just organizations, amongst our children also. So I find this to be very fascinating as well.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Now, Shahzad, you can unmute your mic.
Dr. Saab, I'm sorry, but because there are a few participants today,
it's okay. It's okay.
I'm butting in
It's
again. Dr.
Okay.
Saab, the other thing is that one must try and go and visit the people who are socially below the level that you
Correct.
are.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I also, for example, go and I find some beggar and I ask him if he wants to have food. And he says, yes. I take him to a restaurant and there I sit across the table with him and take at least one morsel from what he is getting. And then I tell him that, okay, I've had my food. Now you can eat the rest. And I hope you don't mind. And they feel so happy about it. And I also related an incident that when my father, we had servant quarters, old English-built custom quarters in Kemari, and there were servant quarters. And when a lady who used to be a cook at my grandfather's place fell sick, my father used to insist on taking me along, going to her house, sitting there, asking her well-being, and they would immediately, rush to send their children out to get a bottle of cold drink. And my father said, no, 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 I'm going to have tea, but I'm going to have it homemade and in the cups that you drink in.
Okay.
So I learned to be humble from that very
That's very
moment
nice.
when I was a kid. And he taught me to be humble and consider everybody else to be your equal. Even, don't be overawed by somebody who's very rich, and don't look down upon people who are poor. And this is the practice that I've continued right to this day, and I'm doing it with my grandson, Masha.
MashaAllah. This is a beautiful story that you told us. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Umar Farooq, please unmute your mic.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
हाँ जी, मेरी कंट्रीब्यूशन यही है कि उसमें से कुछ बातें पहले हुई चुकी है कि ये जो वर्च्यूज हैं, ये बीइंग हम्बल इज़ अ ग्रेट वर्च्यू, और ये बड़ी मेहनत करनी पड़ती है, इसके लिए आपको कंटिन्यूअसली एफर्ट करते रहना चाहिए। तो मुझे दो चीज़ें हेल्प की हैं तो मैं कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकता हूँ। एक तो ये कि आपकी सेंस ऑफ ग्रेटिट्यूड जितना अच्छी होगी उतने आप हम्बल रहते। दूसरा ये कि आपका जो लोगों के साथ बिहेवियर है उसको अगर आप अपने बिहेवियर को ऑब्जर्व करें तो वो आपको ये बता देगा कि आप जो है वो आपके अंदर ये क्वालिटी जो है वो किस हद तक पाई जाती है। और आपकी जो है बस यही दो तीन चीजें।
नहीं, absolutely right, especially the second one, that if you imagine how other people think about you without even asking their feedback, that at times is quite sufficient to let you know how you actually are faring in life, whether you have that element of humility or not. So thinking about how other people would give an opinion about you if they are asked about you, especially people who are subordinates, people who are working for you, people who are under you, people who are your juniors. So because you see what happens is that we are in our true colors when we are talking or conversing with people who are inferior to us in status. I'm talking about not human status, of course, but in the case of responsibilities. So we can be harsh, we can be rash, we can be angry, but we will never be angry and rash and harsh with our peers in normal circumstances, and never, I think, in the case of our superiors. So yes, this is one way to assess your own self, whether that element of humility is there or not, that how people would rate you, how they would think about you. If they are asked whether this person is humble or not, what would their feedback would be? Yes, of course, there could be, there could be some exaggeration also, but by and large, the opinion of other people is like a mirror to you. It reflects what you are, and you must always take this very seriously.
Okay, Dr. Muhammad Asif, you may unmute your mic now.
Thank you. And this is in continuation to my earlier question regarding our interaction during office environment and our being humble in our interaction with the subordinates. And I agree with your response, but I'll give you a practical example just to have your views and your response. Like I work in public sector environment. This is different from the private sector. And I am at a position where I have to take certain policy decisions, particularly with respect to some financial matters. So at times, the situation arises, there is a request from certain quarters about, like, for example, release of funds.
Okay.
And I am of a particular view that this should not be the case. And I do not agree on certain assumptions. The system in place in public sector is that a particular matter is initiated in a bottom-up approach. I always encourage my subordinates to give their independent, fair opinion. I do not force them. In this way, I try to be accommodative with them instead of forcing them to write something on a file, which I direct them on conscience as they think fit, without any pressure or without any influence. And at time, what I get is that I have to take a decision, and that is a tough and harsh decision. And my subordinates, they understand this thing. And what they do, they take advantage of this accommodative behavior that I do not force them. They do not initiate on a file that should have been initiated by them. And at the end, the whole responsibility to take this decision, that comes on my shoulders. Without any element of my, that is because of my, that was my leniency. But still I have to, such like thing in official matters. Then how should one keep with such behaviors of your subordinates, and you are realizing that they are teaching you, they are cheating you, and they are going to take undue advantage of your leniency and your accommodative behavior, and then still you have to face certain situations. So what are your...
So again, I mean, this is a very specialized advice that you are seeking. Maybe if you can discuss more with me individually, I can be in a more appropriate position to give you advice. But in general, you see, you have to realize that if the decision making rests on you, and you are the sole responsible person, then of course, if things come to you, then this is what is intended by your organization, that you took advice from people, you consulted them, and whether they gave the right advice or wrong advice or whatever intent they have, you had it before you. So the final decision was to be in any case taken by you, had to be taken by you, and you actually gave them the choice to give their opinion. So whether it's a fair opinion or not, as long as you are concerned, you are clear through your own path. Yes, the problem would have been when you were in a position in which it was binding on you to consult your employees or your organizational individuals, and once a decision had to be taken, it would be the decision of the majority, and the majority decision would have had to prevail. In that case, the whole setup would have been different. But the setup that you are describing is actually one in which you are the sole decision maker. All that you're doing is you're trying to involve other people in this process of decision making so that you can have an input. But I think that at times, people who are at the receiving end, they don't have the complete picture with them, and they can always make such mistakes. So I think that as long as you are consulting them, and you have a review of all the opinions that you have, and then you take your own individual decision, I think it will be very fair. Even if people might blame you, it would still be fair, because you see, a person cannot be perfect. I mean, we make a lot of errors in our decision making. So none of us can be perfect. So we have to realize that it is the best possible thing that we are doing, and consulting people is one of the very nice things. I mean, very practical things which can reduce the margin of error, but still it's not a foolproof method. So I think you have done the best on your part, and clearly I think that if you have to take the decision, then this is how you have to proceed, and just forget about what other people are doing.
Umar Farooq, you may unmute your mic.
जी बस मैं थोड़ा सा डॉक्टर आसिफ की डिस्कशन में ऐड करना चाहूँगा कि एक तो आपकी जॉब में मतलब यू डोंट नीड टू बी लीनिएंट, यानी अगर आप मतलब ऑनेस्ट टफ डिसीजन लेंगे तो इसका मतलब हम्बल से इसका होना कोई ताल्लुक नहीं है. यू हैड टू बी स्ट्रांग एंड मतलब यानी आपके डिसीजन जो ऑनेस्ट होंगे वही सही है. हम्बल आप ये कर सकते हैं कि आपके जो सबॉर्डिनेट्स हैं आप उनके साथ मोर ओपन हो. आप जैसे वो आपके अगर आपसे बात करना चाहते हैं, आपसे होना चाहते हैं, और आपके जो उनके साथ एक रिलेशंस हैं ह्यूमन टू ह्यूमन, उसमें आप हम्बल रहे तो मेरा ख्याल में ये मैटर थोड़ा सा सॉल्व हो सकता है. लेकिन बीइंग लीनिएंट एंड डूइंग द रॉन्ग डिसीजन इज नॉट हम्बलनेस.
यस, ठीक है, दैट इज अ वेरी फेयर असेसमेंट. थैंक यू उमर फारूक साहब.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. And if anyone has anything else to discuss or share, you may do so now. Otherwise, we will proceed to the Q&A session. So I think we can proceed to the Q&A session since no one has anything else to discuss. So whoever has questions, please raise your hand or send me in the chat. Okay, Abdul Rahman, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, with regards to stoicism, apart from that theology, how good it is for character development and looking inside ourselves?
Well, I think since Stoicism is a very nuanced philosophy, and you deny a lot of things to you, it's like, I mean, it takes you to close to asceticism if you start practicing Stoicism. So I think what religion wants us, if you look the whole matter or review the whole matter in the light of religion, the best word that I can think of is moderation or simplicity. So that is what religion teaches us. I mean, you don't need to be stoic in matters or in areas in which God has blessed you, and you should not be a spendthrift. You should not cross the limits in any such thing. So it's like being moderate in our approach in life, instead of denying us or denying ourselves a lot of God's favors and gifts that He might have given us, and being austere. So that is something which might lead to an extremist lifestyle, and which might affect your family. It might affect your wife and other people around you. So I think the best thing that I can advise you is that instead of being a stoic, I think the best thing would be that you be a moderate person in your approach towards life. Neither be an Epicurean, I mean, which is the opposite of stoicism. So Epicureans are people who are always who are always merrymaking, who are always indulging. So indulgence is their forte, and Stoics, they are basically self-denying. They are always ascetics. So I think Islam or our religion teaches us to be in between, to be moderate in our approach.
Sir, with regards to Stoicism, again, in Stoicism, there are some concepts like things we can control and things we cannot control. Can we use only that concept in our life? I mean, especially when somebody is trying to...
As I said, I mean, at times Stoicism works very beautifully, especially, you see, when you are in a time of grief and you consign the matter to God, and you don't just let it get the better of you. So there are techniques in Stoicism that are very helpful also. But remember, they must not cross your human side. So typically Stoics, for example, if they are inflicted with some grief, they will advise themselves that I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to feel the grief. This is against human nature, humanity. I mean, we have to be human all the time. So Stoicism, on many occasions, it crosses this humanistic boundary. We always have to be human in our approach. We cannot deny natural emotions, and this is what leads to extremism and many other philosophies in which we will never be able to abide by them. We might abide by them in our concepts, but in reality, they are not practical at all.
Got it, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. I'm sorry, I missed one comment by Riaz, and that was position responsibilities need to be well defined. We do this mistake of hoping that employees will take responsibility. Don't forget that they are putting 8 hours and they hold no stake in your success.
Okay, so that was an advice given to Dr. Muhammad Asif, I believe.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
So anyone who has any more questions, please raise your hand. Yes, Abdurrahman.
Sir, again, with regards to our topic of being humble, I was just having this question, like when you said that we are able to look and small piece of wood in other people's eyes, but not in ourselves. I think that's because it's very difficult or kind of like problematic to look inside ourselves, because we are not able to understand what things are right and wrong within ourselves, but we are able to see clearly outside what's going on. It's just like a camera having a default in its lens. It can capture the other side, but it cannot capture itself.
Yes, so you see, I think you can have recourse to your mobiles, in which you have a reverse camera, in which you deflect the camera. Instead of looking at other people, you look towards your own self. So it's just a question of turning that camera inwards. It's a mental habit, it's a mental attitude that we need to adapt to. So normally we are always looking outside, I mean, because our eyes are going to view the outside environment, so we are always looking outside. We need to shut our eyes and look inside as well. It's just a question of training. It's a question of developing a habit. It's like meditating and trying to find out who we are from inside. So the famous philosopher Socrates, you must have heard of him, he has famously said that know thyself. I'm sure you must have heard of this, that know thyself. So basically this knowledge of your own self, who you are, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, how you can improve upon yourself. Yourself has to be the center of your attention. And the more you concentrate on your own self, the more you will be able to improve upon your own self. And the more you concentrate on your outside environment, the more your focus will be on the outside environment, and you'll be deflected from your own improvement. So it's not that we should not look at the outside environment. Of course, that's another need. But the focus and the prime attention should be directed towards our own well-being, towards our own selves.
Sure, sir. Any discipline of science like psychology, or what we use mostly to look within ourselves? Like we have many disciplines in psychology.
Basically, it's psychology, but I think more than psychology, people need good mentors. So it's like life coaching, mentoring, grooming. These are some of the areas that were under. I mean, they were always discussed by our elders in the past, especially in our Eastern societies. Our elders would be the ones, like our grandparents, who would teach us these things verbally. So there would be no class. There cannot be any class, because these are human experiences. So basically, it is generally your parents or your teachers or your grandparents who impart you this knowledge of how to navigate through life. And so we, in our own organization, we also do some of these things. But primarily, if you look up mentoring on the internet, or you just Google it, life coaching, mentoring, these are the two things which are basically involved in self-reflection, self-actualization, self-improvement. These disciplines will help you.
Sure, thank you.
And there's one thing I just remembered, that my father always says that when you're pointing one finger towards other people, always remember that 3 fingers are pointing towards you.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
3 fingers
not,
up.
Yeah.
So it's like this.
Yeah. So Noshad Shafqat, please ask your question.
Yes, I'm extremely sorry, Dr. Saab, but
Okay, it's fine.
Aruba,
It's fine. You don't need to
Aruba,
apologize.
Aruba is a kind moderator, and she also shares my surname. So I'll take advantage of that. Dr.
Okay.
Saab,
Yeah.
recently in our mosque, there was a problem, something with the water tank.
Okay.
And the Imam Saab, one fine day in the Maghrib prayers, mentioned that those of you who had prayed, who had done wuzu
Hmm.
in the mosque in the last 15 days, should offer those namaz again.
Hmm.
I went up to him and told him that it was not necessary because there would be many
Hmm.
who were there for that
Hmm.
particular, for a few prayers, gone away. How could they compensate for that?
Hmm.
So would it
Hmm.
be right to let that go just as it is, or would they have to perform
Yes.
that namaz?
No, I think that the Quranic principle is La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. God doesn't bother people beyond their own capacity. This is like incapacity. I mean, this is beyond their capacity that you ask them to do a wuzu again and then offer all those prayers once again. Why should that happen? Because see, it was not their intentional fault. Something which is done unintentionally, something which comes to our notice and you are not aware of it, that is already something which God has given us these glad tidings that He's not going to hold us accountable. Only when something is done willfully wrong, only then it needs some compensation or atonement. Otherwise, it should be just, just ignored and you should move on in life.
So with regards
Okay.
to looking into ourselves, we should be having a very precise and very accurate knowledge of what's right and what's wrong, right? So, but remember when you said that everything is relative to the person who is interacting with the world. Like previously in the session, I asked you about the hadith, like when it's going to be 100% verified. So when our knowledge is not relative, and as you said earlier about mentoring from who are elderly people, but due to the advent of internet and the vast amount of knowledge being shared on the internet, there is a very big gap of generational gap between our elders and ourselves. I mean, the people who are born in the last 30 years and all of that.
Right.
So the dynamics of the present world is so changing so fast. So how should we maintain our sense of ethics when everything is relative?
I think we have to make this distinction that everything is not relative. There are certain absolute truths as well. And absolute truths, for example, justice, fairness, sympathy, kindness, these are called universal human values. And they are called universal human values because every single human being is going to testify that they are good values. And then there are universally bad values, for example, lying or cheating or dishonesty. So you see, these are universal truths, and I don't find anything to be relative about them. Yes, there could be slight differences in the interpretation of a certain situation, but broadly, these are absolute truths. What we can call as relative truths are truths in which interpretation is something that holds the key. So, for example, if you are interpreting a Quranic verse in a particular way and you have very strong arguments in favor of that, so to you, that interpretation is the correct one. But to another person, there could be a different interpretation of that verse because he holds some other arguments governing that verse to be truer than the ones that you hold. So, this is what we call relative. I mean, something that it can be interpreted in a different way by different people, not because that thing itself is offering two solutions. It is because we as human beings are not always 100% in interpreting something. So I can come up with a different interpretation and someone else can come up with a different interpretation, although of course God intends one of them. So it is here that we say that things are relative, and when they are relative, then I am bound by the reasoning that I feel intellectually convinced of, and someone else is bound by the reasoning that he or she is convinced of. So wherever there is relative interpretation or thing in which relativity is there, then I am bound by the reasoning on the basis of which I believe something to be correct. And that is the case with the other person as well. But as I said, these are certain areas in which relativity is an important factor. Other than that, as I said, there are universal moral truths in which, there's no difference of opinion.
So you're saying that the branches arising from the relative truths that can be interpreted differently and that
Yes.
is allowed.
Yes. That is allowed because you are, as a human being, you can always have a different opinion, and in that case, the reasoning of that thing is something that you're answerable to. And if someone proves to you that reasoning is incorrect, then of course it's our responsibility to change our view. But until the time we change it and we think that our view is correct because our reasoning is more powerful or more convincing, we are answerable for that, and that is what we do.
Okay, so there are absolute truths, and that is guided by the Quran, right, sir, in the form of...
Not just the Quran. I would say by your own conscience. The Quran does not give you these basic truths because it says that this is something that God has already given you at the time of your birth. The Quran, when it mentions these basic truths, you know what the reason is? It just wants to remind you, because we tend to forget. I know truth is good. I know I should speak the truth, but I still forget and I at times lie. So the Quran is also a reminder. So when it is signaling these things, that when it's bringing up these things, it's basically reminding us. As far as these basic truths are concerned, the Quran says, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. The right and wrong has been ordained in our own selves, and it is the conscience that is found in us which is the best judge. So a non-believer does not believe in the Quran. He would still say that honesty and justice and kindness, these are good values. And this is regardless of his belief in any divine religion. So that is why they are called universally accepted truths.
You can ask your question.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sir. Dr. Sir, my
Walaikum.
question is somewhat related in the sense that I am asking about a certain ayat in the Quran. My question is that if during the time of the Prophet, if the Prophet or God made this statement that such and such thing is a sign of end of times, or such and such thing is a sign of the hour, then we would assume that that thing still has to happen. It hasn't happened, and it will happen near the end of times. That would be our basic assumption. Now, the Quran makes this statement about Jesus Christ, that Isa is a sign of the end of times. When we have this very clear surah about Hazrat Isa, why does your particular school of thought does not take this ayat as face value, because you guys believe that the literature, the grammar, and the language of the verses are more important, and they should be valued. Things should be taken as they seem. So this ayat doesn't that contradict your belief that Isa is not going to return in the time near the end of times, whereas the Quran is very clearly stating this.
I think that maybe you need to just look at some of my writings and the writings of my teacher, Ustaz Ghamidi. So we have reviewed this verse that you have presented and said that this verse cannot be used as a sign of his return for several reasons. And I think that that will take a little more time for me, and we are running short of time. If you could just read some of the things that we have written on this topic, because this verse has been brought into discussion. وَإِنَّهُ لَعِلْمٌ لِلسَّاعَةِ. This is the verse. This is from Surah Zukhruf, and it has been analyzed in detail and shown that this could have only been a sign for people who were witnesses near the end of judgment. I mean, who were present there, because the Quran is presenting something to the people who were right there. So how could he have been a sign for people who are living and for whom Jesus has yet to come? Jesus' return could only have been a sign for people who would be witnessing his second return. So people who were present at the time of the Prophet, he could never have been a sign for them. So you have to understand that here this particular verse is not talking about his second return. It's basically talking about a very different thing. And for that, I'll ask you to please go through some of the writings and talks that we have given on this topic.
Okay, but could you just speak one more minute about this and tell me how is, in your opinion, Quran branding him as the sign of end of times? What is Quran actually saying here?
The fact that the power of the Almighty is that He created Jesus out without the male gender. And this shows that the Almighty has the power to create the Day of Judgment once again. So you see, the people who were in front of the Prophet, they said that it's impossible that this world could be recreated. So it is they are being told that look how impossible things have been made possible by the Almighty. So in normal situations, you require a father to create a child. And look how in this instance that Jesus has been created in a miraculous way. And this miraculous way shows that God has miraculous powers, and He can bring about the Day of Judgment. Because you see, they said that how can we be reborn? How? Because our bones are going to decompose and they're just going to decay in dust. And how can these mountains who are, who are fixed so firmly, how can they move about? So it is they who are being told that a person who has done this, or a being who has done this, how is it difficult for him to recreate humankind once again?
Thank you. Sir, with regards to the learning values from our elders, most of the elders in Indian subcontinent, they are heavily influenced from tasawwuf, because there was a lot of tasawwuf in the previous times, right? Almost all the sermons and scholars in the masjid also till date, I think they are heavily influenced under tasawwuf. So when we get values from them, how can we know that? I mean, how can we decipher whether it's true or not? Again, it's a challenge for us to, I mean, test their values, whatever they are giving to us.
You see, if you look at some of the things that they teach, you'll find out that the extent to which they take those values is superhuman. It crosses human value. It makes us think that only a superhuman can do certain things. The extent of self-denial, the extent of stoicism, as we were just talking about, and asceticism is way beyond what religion teaches us. So if we look at the standards which are given by the Qur'an regarding humility, regarding justice, regarding the various truths that we already have talked about, you will find that those standards are more humanistic, they're more humanly manageable. And so that is why we need to review philosophically and also intellectually the basic tenets of the tasawwuf, and and give this analysis before people, present it, that look how the Qur'an is viewing a particular thing, and how tasawwuf, for example, is asking us to go way beyond that. And it's like, that's something which is abnormal to a certain extent. So I think one by one, if you can take various things that they suggest and scrutinize them in the light of the guidance that we have in the form of the Qur'an, you'll find, you start off, of course, with their concept of Wahdatul Wujud, you start off with their concept of prophethood, you start off with their concept of the Sharia, how it becomes something which can be overlooked if you have attained a certain level of piety. So there are certain things that you can present from the Quran and clearly see that no one is above the Sharia. The prophets of God, there are no one who's greater than the prophets of God. Even they were always required to follow the Sharia. I mean, there's a whole list of things, and slowly you can go through each of them. But one thing that you might also need to know is that a lot of things that tasawwuf tells us not the philosophical side of the tasawwuf, but the practical side of the tasawwuf, it relates to good morality as well. So it's not that they are always presenting extreme morality. At times, being a good person, a good-natured person, a considerate person, a person who looks after other people, a person who's hospitable. So these are some of the things that they also teach, and I think that that is something in which we shouldn't have any objections. But it is only when they take these values which are sort of customized to human level, to a divine level, or to a prophetic level, that the problem comes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, and thank you everyone else for participating. We indeed had a wonderful conversation and discussion about the subject. So we will be concluding our session here.